Hello.
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 Oh, hi, Mark.
Hey, I'm Antonio Banderas, and I'm going to tell you this is a one fucked up podcast. Not whitewash, just a stupid impression of a celebrity. All three stooges of us are back in the house today. I have wanted to cover this saga years ago when I first started this podcast, and lo and behold, JJ got me to get my head out of my ass and said, "We're doing it. We're doing it." Final. He had re-seen it recently, and I'm like, "That's awesome." We're talking Werner Herzog, and then we're talking Italian ripoff of Nosferatu. But it's Klaus Kinski easily at his best, at his peak, and as we usually do with these cult and grindhouse and drive-in and art house movies, it's just so much fun to just try and figure out why it connected with both the mainstream and a cult crowd. And we have like probably the most gothic vampire movie really to date in quite a while.
Yeah, and it was done shot for shot. Here the Mirror version, except Herzog fleshed it out more because now you had sound.
Yeah, sound. You had a few more graphic visions, but it's still a very tame movie ultimately compared to the other ones.
Well, you got to think it's 1979, so that's the year there's 3 Dracula movies out. There's Love at First Bite, which is a great comedy. There's John Badham's Dracula, which is with Frank Langella, Kate Nelligan, and Laurence Olivier and Donald Pleasance.
Yep.
And then you have Werner Herzog going back to the source, which him doing F.W. Murnau's Nosferatu. And he did it basically because, remember, he'd done Aguirre, The Wrath of God in 1972. He did Stroizek. He did Hearts of Glass. And
this is a few years before Fitzcarraldo, but yeah, he had done some other documentaries.
This is before Fitzcarraldo. This is a couple of years before Fitzcarraldo. So what he does is he does Aguirre, The Wrath of God. That's the big bang for him as a director, because no one had ever seen anything like that before. And then he does Stroizek, he does The Mystery of Caspar Hauser, and he does Stroizek. No, he does Stroizek, Hearts of Glass, and The Mystery of Caspar Hauser. And then after that he decides, okay, I'm going to go back and I'm going to do Nosferatu, because to him, Nosferatu is the greatest German movie ever made, which I can't help but agree with him. And
his hard to end the material too, even though, like you were saying offline, he wasn't used to at first to playing to genre rules and expectations, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like a gun for hire or workman. Like it feels like dedication. And vampires have just evolved so many times. I'm just getting really sick of how, even before Twilight crap, like how people feel like it should still be just ultra gruesome or silly, like Anne Rice, or just even, Gothic is even a word that I think many people use, but half the time no one really knows what it means,
Well, to me, this is a study in character too, because he does if you see the movie, the beginning titles are like haunting, because it's creepy. These mummies. Yeah, it's these mummies he went to Mexico and he got these mummies of people who had died, or they supposedly, there was a cholera epidemic and they buried these people. So he took all the mummies and lined them up, and he just shoots them all, and you see, Nosferatu the vampire, and it's like, we're looking at this. We're looking at death, basically. This is what it is. This is death.
This is death. This is the only way death can look.
Yeah, and
would this be considered the first Faces of Death movie?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
This is the foreshadow. There's a lot of foreshadowing in this movie, but yes, this is this might be on an intro on a bootleg of Faces of Death somewhere saying, "Prepare your eyes for a feast among the." Yeah,
it would be like in Mondo. It would be like in Mondo Cane. They would pull something. And these are mummies of people who are still alive. Because if you look, some of them look like they were still like they were buried alive and they just didn't know and they were trying to get out. But the movie. I mean, the movie itself, it does follow the trope of what Murnau had in the beginning.
Yeah, Count Orlok,
John,
for those wondering. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Murnau has, Jonathan Harker, he meets Renfield. Renfield is, the real estate agent. He has to send him to the Carpathian Mountains.
Yeah.
Lucy, his wife, Jonathan's wife, he meets Dracula. Dracula comes back and brings the plague to what it was back then was Lubeck.
Mm-hmm.
In the thing. They called it Vismar in I think the English version. So
this is the kind of movie that makes you want to look up some of the locations, let alone some of the other props and books that are in it.
Yeah, yeah. And some of the locations from the original 22 movie are still around, but they were bombed out during the war.
Yeah.
So there are some that are still there. So
it's a good companion to Shadow of the Vampire, which concerns the making of Nosferatu with the that the Renfield actor or the Orlok actor might have actually been a vampire terrorizing the film crew. But this is kind of the same kind of pace. Like they both follow the same kind of ethic of having kind of more showing, less telling, and just keeping in brooding suspense instead of who's going to die next.
And what he did was he made the characters more human. So
yes,
to me, it's like Jonathan is motivated not for a better life for his wife because they live in this really like small house, and he says, "Oh, I could buy a bigger house for Lucy, and it would be good to get out of this town, and with all the canals and everything like that." And Lucy is played by Isabella Adjani. And let me just give you who's playing who in this. Roland Topor is Renfield.
Mm-hmm.
Bruno Gans, who you may know from Downfall.
Yeah, numerous. Excellent international actor. Yep.
Yeah. Isabella Adjani, you'd know from Diabolique, or she was in the story of Adele, the story of Adele H, or and there was Roland Topor, who wrote The Tenant for Roman Polanski, and he wrote Fantastic Planet. He's Renfield, and then Klaus Kinski is brought in to be Dracula. Now, here's something I love about the movies, that every time we saw Dracula on screen, he was this handsome looking guy, and he was going to bite people and drink their blood. Right?
He was like Medusa, just the whole cake is a lie, but you can't take your eyes off me, so you're already dead. I've sealed your fate.
This Dracula, the way you feel he's a tragic character, because he's talking to Harker and he's like, "I don't attach anything to glittering fountains or sunshine anymore. I like to be alone with my thoughts. I like the darkness and the shadows." He doesn't know, time is an abyss profound as 1,000 nights. The ability not to grow old is something, and you feel this tragic. This guy wants to. This thing is he doesn't want to be immortal.
Yes.
But yet he's, and I'm trying to put this all into perspective, but the way he frames every character is something different, and it's like one on top of the other, on top of the other, on top of the other, on top of the other. And
it blends.
When we meet Dracula, he's just this guy standing in the hallway with like a cap on, and he's like, "Jonathan Harker, yes, you have been expected. Come in. The night is cold, and you must be tired and hungry." And he's like, you walk in. It's not like good evening, I bid you welcome. It's like this, like,
Yeah,
he's just this like golem-like creature who shows up.
right.
Now,
They think it's a birth defect or something, or just
yeah,
deformed disease.
yeah,
But
he's just this weird-looking person, and with pointy teeth. We don't, Harker hasn't seen this before. Harker's just traveled 4 weeks, and the thing we got to look at is like the original Nosferatu is basically based on the book by Bram Stoker,
right, they
and
use exact scenes while doing some of their own take on it.
Yeah.
I mean, they sometimes refer to him as the Death Bird, which could be used as an allusion to creepy.
The Greek is Nosferus, which is plague bringer. And somebody, I think the guy who was Henry Galeen, who was the screenwriter, overheard it and heard it a different way. And he said, "Oh, Nosferatu, that sounds like a real great name." So,
which is wild because that's what the rats are supposed to illuminate too, is that the plague is upon them.
And the thing that it's like is, I've always said, like you watch in the beginning, it's this nice little thing. Oh, he's gonna go see Dracula. Herzog had this thing where would use music in the movies.
Yes.
So he had a guy named Florian Frick, who had a band called Popol Vuh. And they would do like this atmospheric stuff. Like he was the guy who did the soundtrack for Aguirre, and he would do the soundtrack for Fitzcarraldo. Very atmospheric, very kind of. But he used a piece of music from Richard Wagner's Das Rheingold, the Nibelung, Das Rheingold.
Wait.
Okay, do you know when Jonathan's going to the castle, and you hear that? Like he's hit, like that piece of music shows that Harker has hit his goal. And then he uses it again when Dracula comes to Wismar and is unloading all the cases of earth and the rats and everything like that. So basically, it's describing to the piece of music, the theme of that music is describing two characters who have basically come and gotten to their goals. So that's how it works. I'll show. You have to watch it to understand it.
Okay, I'll re-see that part, but
yeah.
I do love the music in general. Like it kind of caters to the film's poetic nature. Well, what do you think about the book that they use, which is an actual book that they take the one of vampires, terrible ghosts, magic, and the 7 deadly sins?
Yeah,
that's what they used to defeat Orlok with, and it's like, see that this movie, like all the props and costumes and settings are just as much a character.
Yeah, that's the great
thing. Which is not something I can say about an average blockbuster where it's often just good or bad. People shoot too fast, where sometimes it's like, can we slow down? Can we stay in this world for a bit longer?
Well, he picked the town of Delft in Holland because he said it was like a stage for him for a play.
Oh, it's definitely it's a very interactive stage play. That is for sure.
And then when we see Jonathan go up to the castle, that castle was in Czechoslovakia. And the thing you find out is Herzog had a crew of about maybe 10 people working with him. And to shoot that good of a movie with only 10 people, we usually have a crew of about 50, 60 people. He only had 10 people working on that, which is great. So
what do you think of the hyena representing a werewolf?
Well, that's in the 22. That's in the 1922 version. That doesn't come up in
okay.
This one. But
I thought there was a scene they showed.
no,
Okay.
well, they do show a bat flying around, and
Okay.
that's from actually a nature video that they did. But he flips the tropes around of some of those characters in Nosferatu the vampire.
Okay.
Because if you remember in every movie Van Helsing was in, he's the one who's going to destroy the vampire.
Yeah.
Right.
In this movie, he's a scientist who basically doesn't believe half the shit Lucy is telling him.
Yeah.
You know.
And you can understand because like there's always just moments in silence where everyone's kind of processing this info at the same time we the audience are kind of processing it. So we don't feel like, oh, he's a dum-dum. He's just like, I don't understand this. This doesn't make sense.
The guy playing Dr. Van Helsing in this version of Nosferatu is like telling Isabella Johnny's character, you know, look, this has to be sought out scientifically. You know,
Yes.
we're not, these are just childhood things, and does the children pick the flowers before it grows? And she's like going, no, you have to understand. This tells me everything about what is going on in
right.
With Jonathan's diary is telling me everything. This book is telling me everything about it. In one part she's running around, and there's a great aerial shot of the town square, and all these guys are like bringing coffins down for people who are dying from the plague. And she says, "What are you doing? What are you doing? I know what's causing this. I know what's causing this." They're like, "Go home, go home. Don't you know you'll catch the plague?" "No, I know what's causing this. Listen to me. I know what's causing this." She's like, they look at her like she's crazy, but she's not crazy. She's trying to tell. It's like she's trying to be like, she's trying to tell them what's going on, and they don't want to listen to her. She's the heroine of the movie. She's the hero. It's not Jonathan. It's not Van Helsing. It's her.
Mm-hmm.
She has to kill this creature. And when there's a part that I love where he shows up in her room, and he's like, "Let me introduce myself. I am Count Dracula." And she's like, he's trying to tell her, will you help me? There'll be salvation for you and your husband. And he says, if only I could partake of the love that you and Jonathan have, which shows you he wants to be loved. He wants love. And I think, and I'm like scattered. I'm like going all over the place with this movie.
Well,
it's like,
the movie is pretty over the place, but it's not unorganized or sloppy.
It's not. No. But it's like she has to be the one that has to destroy it. In the 22 version, she's like, damsel in distress. Help me, help me, help me, help me. In this one, she's like, I have to kill this thing, and if you're not going to help me, I'm going to do it myself. And that's the one thing I love. He changes the heroine.
Yes.
To be. And this is the same year. This is the same year Aliens comes out. So you have to realize
it was a progressive year.
It's a progressive. This is not your daddy's vampire picture.
Mm-hmm.
So
every character has a purpose here. They're either going to explain info, but they're not going to be just a body count waiting to happen.
No.
Yeah, and just the way you described it, JJ, the thing it kind of flips. It kind of. I'm going to say this badly, but it reinforces a trope while at the same time overturning it. Now, when you were discussing her, she was trying to get people to believe. The one thing that flipped into my mind was Kevin McCarthy from Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
That too. That went through my head too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so that was a trope that got reinforced because she was the one who knew what was going on the whole time, and nobody was listening to her. But then when he said that is what inspired her to really kind of say, "I have to kill it." That's where the same trope that was reinforced got turned on its head, because with going back to Vision of Body Snatchers, what he was doing was he trying to get people to listen, and he just kept failing and failing and failing, but he didn't really accomplish anything, because eventually everybody was turning to pot people.
Yeah. What can you do?
Yeah. And in this case, it worked the exact opposite. It was, I don't want to try to understand it. I don't want to try to get more people to understand it. I just have to get rid of it.
Right. I can ask for their help and waste a lot of time just getting angry that they are still in disbelief at my findings, or I can just take out the trash.
Exactly. And like you say,
and then yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead. No, Tom, you go.
Yeah, like you said,
Who's on
with
first?
Alien coming out, with Alien coming out that same year, where we got a version of a female protagonist who was both the quote unquote soft kind, but also very much a badass. That in of itself kind of lends itself into, like you said, it was a very progressive year, and things were kind of turning in that time frame. Women were starting to be more prominent in places that were formerly just dominated by men. And to be honest, it was a sign of the times, while at the same time being a period piece almost. It was a period piece within a period piece, as it were. A period piece about the expectation of the late 70s and going to early 80s, when women became even more prominent. While at the same time, it was being built around something that happened way, way before then, where the roles which were clearly defined, and women were expected to be in the background versus being at the forefront.
Yeah, and then not only that, but Jonathan Harker in this movie is not like a Jonathan Harker that we would see like in, Dracula down the road. He's very motivated by money, and
which is a nice insert, because every other time it's like, okay, he could go at any time and leave anywhere, and we never really get any motive other than that he or Renfield are preying on people, so
Renfield
go ahead.
is almost comical, but he's that like strange comical. Like he's sitting there going, like that's his life. Yeah, he's just like what he goes to the guy goes to
best in life.
he says to him, he's like, what's wrong with the patient? He's like, oh, the one who bit the cow. He's like, yeah. He says, we keep trying to give him food. He keeps trying to eat flies, which is something he does in the movie. And then we realize he's Dracula's lackey, because he comes up to Dracula's standing there at one point, and he goes up and he's kissing the hem of Dracula's jacket, and he pushes him away. He's like, what should I do now, master? He says, go now to Riga. The army of rats and the Black Death wait for you.
Yes.
Do what you. And he says, "They will be done. I will be done." He's like screaming and yelling and shit like that.
And he's very hysterical, but it's not unintentionally funny at all. It's just a good.
It's kind of like you're kind of disturbed a little bit about it, But
this guy brings out the worst in everybody, even before he kills them.
Oh yeah, yeah. And the thing that I've loved about this movie is that the ending is such a curveball.
Yeah, it's earned,
because we gotta let everybody know this. You know that Jonathan is bitten twice by Dracula, and then remember the first night he's there, he's slicing the bread, and he cuts his finger. And we're in 22.
Just like other versions. Yep.
Your blood, your precious blood. He says, Dracula walks up to him and goes, the knife is old. It can be dirty. You could get blood poisoning. And he just grabs the finger, just starts sucking on it. He's like, it's for the best. He's like, it's the oldest remedy. I'm like, no, it's not. But You know,
nope.
so as he's coming home,
duly noted.
He escapes the castle, right? He escapes the castle. He's sick. He goes home. He doesn't recognize Lucy. He's sitting in the chair at one point, and he's like, "The sun, it's hurting me." And we're like, "Okay, that doesn't sound right." Yes. And then as we watch him, he starts to become like paler and paler and paler, and his eyes are sinking in more. And at the end, it's like, "Oh, fuck."
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, the ending's great because they do the classic, him drinking the blood, and then he he doesn't evaporate into the sunlight. He has like the sun just like whacks him, like kills him basically.
Oh, it totally
and
does.
There's Van Helsing sitting there going, "Oh God, I should have listened to her. A stake and a hammer. I must dispatch this scene quickly." And he runs out, and he comes back with a stake and a hammer. Jonathan goes, "Wait, where are you going?" And you got to remember, before she's going to sacrifice herself for Dracula, she puts the consecrated host around him, so Dracula cannot get to him.
Mm-hmm.
And you hear him like nailing the stake into Dracula's heart, and Jonathan goes like this, goes like that, like, and he's like, "Help, help!" He's like, "He is Van Helsing. He has murdered the Count." And there's like, Van Helsing with the bloody stake and the hammer. He's like, "What is this?" He's like, I did what I had to do." He's like, "That's for the courts to decide. You're under arrest."
Oh, God.
And Van Helsing gets arrested for killing the Count. So then what happens is they all leave. He tells the maid, "Fetch a broom. Sweep this up. Can't you see it's dirty?" He's like, and all of a sudden he takes the crucifix off and throws it to the ground, and then he opens his mouth and he's got the fangs, and the nails, and he goes, "Seal the room for the official autopsy, and bring me my horse. I have much work to do." And he rides off into the sunset, or the sun. Yeah, like he rides off into eternity.
This is the definition of cinematic.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like that idea of like, wait a minute, the guy who was supposed to be the hero now becomes the villain.
Yeah.
And what we see is like this guy who's like, he was so innocuous to what was going on, and he didn't realize, in the end, he became the thing that he did.
It would benefit from even a few different rewatches at college courses, I think, just because it's so much to take in all at once.
Yeah.
So dare we bring up the Bastard sequel?
Oh God!
By infamous producer Augusto Caminito, who credits include. Yep, it's really bad. I saw it on Tubi about a few years back. About everyone knows. There. Oh well, there you go. As everyone's probably much heard about it. There's a cameo by Christopher Plummer. It has nothing to do. It's a cash in. The actress who he's supposed to be making out with was basically sexually assaulted behind the scenes, and to where and Augusto Caminito, I mean, his credits include Django in Name Only movie, the Western The Ruthless Four, the cop thriller The Great Kidnapping, and the giallo comedy The Cat. And this pretty much ended his directing career. He was just like, I thought this would be an easy cash in, and this is just more trouble than it's worth.
From what Kinski kicked him off the movie.
Yeah.
Like,
and
Kinski directing him.
But after the actress just read them the riot act, he was like, we're shutting this damn film down. We're gonna have to use whatever footage we got, because there's just nothing else we can use here without this guy just. And
the way they did the story was, okay, so basically they found him and they trapped him in a freaking vault.
Yeah, very bizarre.
The family's trying to, like, I just forget the it was just kind of, I just remember seeing Nosferatu in Venice. I'm like, oh gee. And Kinski didn't want to shave his head again. He kept his hair long.
Mm-hmm.
And he thin. he didn't do the nails or anything like that. The thing I got to say about Nosferatu, the 79 remake, is the makeup is astounding.
Yeah.
Because I found out a couple of things. Number one, those ears were destroyed almost every day that he wore. Yeah. The woman who did the makeup was this like Vietnamese woman, and she was really good at applying the makeup for him. And what I found out was Kinski wanted to play Dracula almost frenetic, and Herzog would tell him, "No, you can't do that." Kinski would have a tantrum, and then after he was done with the tantrum, he'd say, "Okay, let's shoot the movie." And that's why Kinski has such a subdued performance in the film, because he's basically tired.
Yeah, he really is. And he was on his best behavior under Herzog, except for his other further productions. And on that unofficial sequel, he just didn't want to do the work. And one of the biggest complaints is the film just kind of goes from scene to scene without any foreshadowing or brooding suspense, and you wonder what happened to these characters. But it's kind of like a typical Italian ripoff.
A lot of nudity.
Yeah, it's too sleazy a movie, and it's not sexy or anything. It's just one of those where you're just like, this is trashy, and these actors literally had 1 or 2 days of filming and left. Donald Pleasance appears, and you're like, where'd he go?
It's kind of sad when you think about it, because that's one of the last movies Kinski would make, because he would do, I think it was right before Cobra Verde, because you got to remember, they only did 5 movies together, him and Herzog. Yes. It goes The Wrath of God, Nosferatu. 10 days after Nosferatu wrapped, they did Wojciech, which is where he plays the lunatic soldier. Then he does Fitzcarraldo, and then he does Cobra Verde, which is basically, I think, from what I remember, like, what I read was that Kinski gave Herzog the script for Paganini, and Herzog turned to him and said, "This is unfilmable. I won't do this." And got pissed off at him. But if you watch Paganini, you can see why, because it's a piece of shit, you know.
Yeah. Oh, this is the same guy who was offered to be one of the lead Nazis in Raiders of the Lost Ark, and he returned the script saying it was a piece of shit.
Yeah, I don't like to speak. This movie is a piece of shit. But Nosferatu, the vampire, to me is like, it was so. I saw it when I was 8 years old.
Oh, okay? Yikes!
On cinema, yeah. I remember it being so, like, it hit me like Star Wars. It hit me. I was like, wait a minute, this isn't how vampire movies are supposed to be.
Right.
And then I saw the 22 version when I was in high school. Because you got to remember the original version by Murnau was not really in a lot of circulation back then.
No.
It was it was kind of like Good Times Video would put it out, it'd be the wrong speed, wouldn't be any sound to it. So you'd have to figure that out. And then they put out, the official remastered, cleaned up version of it. And then my parents got me the video cassette double pack.
Oh man.
By Anchor Bay, because I found out later there were 2 versions shot.
Yeah.
There's an English version, which is basically the wide release one. Then there's a German version, which is a little more.
How there's 2 original Universal monster versions of Dracula. There's a Spanish and American version, but it's like you say, you tell the average cinema buff, they're like, "What's the difference?" I'm like, "There's a lot of difference."
Yeah, the German version of Dracula is more. Kinski's more fierce in it when he plays the character. he's got a little bit. There's a little bit more animalistic in his approach to when he's with them, because in the English version you can tell they're like, okay, say these lines and then boom, we're done. They do the German version, they would just shoot each scene back to back, and just try to
very fierce. And
yeah,
I know most people are going to say, hey, the original Nosferatu, that's my jam, or Coppola's Dracula, but this is my personal jam. This is one of my favorites on how to make a vampire movie, because it's, like you say, it's less experimental and more organized, and it doesn't cater to genre tropes.
I tried to figure it out one time, like what.
Yeah, it is hard to explain why it's so good. It's amazing. Good.
You know what it is? It's a director who's done movies that are so offbeat.
That's the best way to put it. Offbeat. Yeah.
He does, his first big movie is Aguirre the Wrath of God. Have you guys seen Aguirre the Wrath of God?
Love it. Got to see it at a college station, and I was like, see, this is the way to see this movie.
Tom, did you ever see it?
I have not.
It's a very nutty, thrilling, outrageous premise, and it works so well.
Yeah. Imagine Hearts of Darkness by Joseph Conrad.
There you go.
Except it's conquistadors.
Absolutely. And like Lawrence of Arabia, like, it shouldn't work at all, but you see all the heartbreak, blood, sweat, and tears that behind the scenes just perfectly make it on screen,
And then there's go ahead, Tom.
I have an insight possibly on why the Kinski version was so revolutionary. It has a lot to do with the films, like all the vampire movies that came in from Nosferatu to Nosferatu. In this case, you have the Universal, the Bela Lugosi version, which is hammy but still has a lot of it there. Then you get into maybe a few, space them out a little bit, and then you get into the 60s and 70s with the Hammer films.
Yep.
And I think those kind of became this is what vampires are. Whereas with the previous
very different from Hammer, but I would love to do a double feature with one of the better Hammer Dracula movies for sure, though.
Yeah. My wife is a big Hammer fan, and she's turned me on to so many of the films, like Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed. And,
we'll do another special soon, I swear.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, that became the standard. Whereas with the Bela Lugosi, that became the standard until Hammer came along, and then Hammer became the standard until you started seeing, I want to say, until the Kinski version, because even then it didn't quite catch on, but we'd see the gradual change of the genre, little twists and turns here. And I think the one thing that really set it apart for me from the original was the use of color versus black and white. Black and white has its own
its own palette. And
it has its own. And even with the grainier, older version, you're dealing there. The lack of color becomes part of the story and part of the atmosphere, and it becomes
bingo.
It becomes what we consider to be gothic. When you add color to it, it changes things. It makes things a lot more visceral, and not so gritty, but it makes it more. I'm not saying it adds a level of believability to it, even with the Hammer films.
Yeah,
even with the Hammer films, which were done in color, those were still muted colors. Whereas one thing that struck out with me was how vivid the colors were.
Besides some great art direction, but as you both wonderfully stated, this is a Herzog movie first, then this is a homage in some respects, even more so than a remake to the original silent movie, and it's a vampire movie last.
But you got to think too, Tom, the colors in it, when you say the color, a lot of it is like, it's not washed out. He doesn't have a lot of bright stuff in there.
Not oversaturated and not last minute. No.
Washed out, like when they're in the town and she's walking through the town, and there's that one scene with the couples that are eating and the rats are on the food, And the one guy goes, come join us. It's our last supper. We've all caught the plague. And that scene just kind of like you just watch and you're looking at the colors and everything. It's not sharp, like most vampire movies. The everything you could see the sharpness in everybody. It's almost filtered, like you're looking at a painting. And somebody brought up in a thing that I was watching. There's a painter that Herzog loved to look at. I forgot his name. It's some like 1800s painter where they showed part of this on one side and then the scene on the other side, and it's like, okay, now I know what he's doing here. He's showing the colors are not like, it's not like green grass. It's like the grass is kind of washed out and the sky's kind of gray, and a lot of it is early morning, late afternoon. There's no 12 o'clock, high noon shit.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's very like it's kind of like that feeling of a dream.
It really
which is one way, I think you could see it as. My mom, when she saw it a couple of times, she used to say it was like a Flemish painting.
I love that stating. Yeah.
I was like, I didn't know what she meant by that till she told me. She's like, well, Flemish paintings meant, it was always something beautiful on the outside, but when you look, when you turn, when you looked at the other part of the painting, it was always something dirty and disgusting, like worms or something. Like, she said that's what it felt like for her a lot of times. And I said, well, that's a very good way of looking at it. I just kind of see it as like, a vampire movie where there's not, you don't have that crushing chords. There's not a lot of music neither.
Yeah, it speaks for itself.
The only part I remember is when they're showing the townspeople having like a dance of death, because of the plague going around and stuff like that, and they're playing this song called Skidaro, which is on a All Things of Kate Bush record.
Oh, and
she took part of that from Kate. Like it's on she actually heard it in Nosferatu and put it in on one of her records.
That's
it's like this. Like I keep thinking it's like Serbian or Croatian, like song about something. I don't know what it was, but it's just really like kind of like almost like throat singing almost.
Yeah.
And then at the end, he uses Sanctus, which is something I've never heard from an opera or something like that. But there's a part where and when you talk about the color, it's almost like he doesn't want to have the sharp, bright colors. He just wants it to be kind of like dark and disturbing, but not to the point where you're like going, ugh, but kind of the point where you're going, am I dreaming this? Am I seeing this? Is this something I should be looking at? That's the way I look at it with him, and he did a great job doing it. I mean, his other movies, like Fitzcarraldo, which and would be like, eons above what he did, because Fitzcarraldo is, he moves a steamship over a freaking mountain, but the color is green and there's like, green and white, and the way the opera looks is like, this was like, wash it all out.
Even just some of his other just period piece dramas and documentaries kind of just give a sense of a craftsman who takes every element, every stage of this series, even before he's started storyboarding and planning.
He never used a storyboard. He never does.
Really? Okay.
No,
wow.
He's not.
Could have fooled me, because he goes for truth.
And talk about, he's like, to me, storyboards are just putting your imagination down. He said something about storyboards, and I was like, oh God, thank you. That's the way. And the thing, and you realize it's not storyboarded. He sets everything up a certain way. he'll go over like maybe 3 or 4 times with the actors in this movie, and he'll just tell them, okay, you're here, you say the lines, you're doing this, and this, and that's it.
That's awesome. You know, so he's more worried about the staging versus planning. Nice.
Yeah, you have to watch the. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tom.
I've seen My Best Friend. I haven't seen the other ones yet.
Yeah, it's like the same thing like you would do. Like that's what sets it apart too, because this version seems more like a stage play.
Yeah,
because you're looking at more things. We're looking at blocking. You're looking at where things are, and you're doing more with the atmosphere itself than necessarily just here's the vampire, here's sucking the blood, here's this. So it's one of those. I would say this is one of those times when a filmmaker taking an approach of a stage play really works. And then you go to the other extreme with The Room with Tommy Wiseau. That didn't translate over at all. But in this case, the lack of a storyboard, the lack of, I guess, basically going with physically figuring out where things need to be and who needs to be where, and that elevates the movie tremendously, and it really shows. It shows a craftsman, a master craftsman, something that people could be studying for centuries to come.
I hope
provided they're not
students
provided they're not bored off their minds with the 42nd remake of Dracula. We're going to do Dracula, but this time we're going to put him in a funny hat.
I hope they can.
Something a Mr. Show sketch.
That is a great one. I hope they can study him. I hope they can study just people like Ingmar Bergman, and sorry, not the actress, but even other German and Swedish, Brazilian filmmakers who value everything.
You have to realize he was part of that new wave, Herzog, with him, Fassbender, Rainier Fassbender, and Wim Wenders, who I love. Wings of Desire.
I love Wim Wenders. That's a good call. Yep.
Which has Bruno Ganz in it playing an angel. I love that. He cut, like, it's just so fun to watch that movie, Far Away So Close and Wings of Desire, because they redid it with Nicolas Cage, and I hated it.
Damn.
They did Wings of Desire, and I was like, I watched. Which one did I watch? Was it Far Away So Close? Or, it was Far Away So Close.
City of Angels, I think. Yeah.
They did a City of Angels, and I was like, But the thing I loved about this was the thing that gets me the most is like nobody's overacting in this.
No one's trying to ham it up or overdo the other, and it's not like most vampire movies where you're looking forward to the next, seduction or gory sword fight and impalement. It's not that kind of expectation that the modern day crowd would probably be looking for.
I mean, there's one part I love, like Dracula's taking a crate of earth into a church that's desanctified, right? And he's running it in, and he's running out, and he sees the cross, and he goes, and then he runs out.
Yeah, it foreshadows kind of what we already know about the vampire myth, while also making us wonder, is he who he claims to be? Is he actually impacted by this?
It's just like he's like scared of it, but it's not like how it used to be. Like when we saw Dracula, when a crucifix was showing, he'd be like, he just goes, and he's like, oh, I don't want to look at it, and he runs away. And there's a comic, this dark comic moment when he does that.
It's a little more subtle compared to in your face and
as compared to the Christopher Lee version.
Or the famous Laurence Olivier doing the world's worst Eastern European accent. You know what I have in my hands, count? Hey, Larry, you did that voice in Voice from Brazil. You don't have to.
God.
there was 3 vampire movies, and then they did Salem's Lot, I think a year later.
Yeah.
Or was that
yeah. Well, I mean, either way, it was TV, but yeah, around that time. Yeah.
And I just remember like thinking to myself, okay, but the vampire they had in there, played by Reggie Nadler, was scary as shit.
Oh yeah.
But now all the behind the scenes footage of him with the makeup on, and I'm like, not that scary. And now now they're remaking Nosferatu with Robert Eggers.
Yeah. The Witch was not my cup of tea. Sorry.
The Witch, The Lighthouse, and I think he did The Norseman too, right?
I haven't seen The Northman. I heard that one was pretty slow, but the Lighthouse, I was just like, so who is this for?
I hope he doesn't screw it up. I hope he doesn't where he takes it and it becomes, Twilight. I hope he does it where it's dark and he puts a little, I know Bill Skarsgård's playing the vampire. So, that'll be good. But yet again, I think to myself, who knows, he could have a great hit on his hands, or it could be a mega piece of shit,
Yeah.
I mean, you can't top. I mean, I've always said this, the 22 is great just for Max Schreck alone.
Yes.
The 1979 one, is just great. It's more multifaceted,
Bingo.
And I gotta say this about the scenes with Dracula and Lucy is like, he kind of looks at Lucy as a peanut butter sandwich.
Yeah.
He wants to have the peanut butter sandwich, but he can't have the peanut butter sandwich.
Yeah.
And to describe a woman like a peanut butter sandwich, it's like no, you gotta understand. He's a human. He's still a human, but he has animalistic tendencies.
Right. He's a brute.
But that's the way I was trying to explain it before. So,
and I mean, this kind of goes back to just kind of the general idea of what a vampire is. It's a cannibal that, thrives on blood sucking and everything. And it, like you said, like you've all both perfectly portrayed, this movie both doesn't take part in genre expectations, but it also, with this extra characterization, helps further the talking points of what has now become pretty absurd in today's subgenres. Dark fantasy and horror.
Yeah.
I think in a way the vampires now, like Twilight.
Not much different than zombies half the time. No,
I'm saying like, I mean, Twilight is a love story. It just happens to be a vampire and a human being. This is a story of a guy who wants love and can't have it because he, there's that animalistic nature within him, and the woman he loves, doesn't love him back. But there's a point where you do see kind of an attraction.
Yep.
And
you know what? Better yet, I'm going to do this as a double feature one day with George Romero's Martin.
Oh yeah.
Which is like the ultimate stopping yourself from becoming a vampire and failing movie.
Yeah.
So sad, so poignant, and so well put together.
It's really
and so hard to find, even though Anchor Bay issued it. Rest in peace, Romero.
Yeah, and I that's the one thing I want to see Martin. There's 2 movies I want to see him do. I want to see Martin, and I want to see There's Always Vanilla.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah. You can find a very rare Blu-ray double feature of that with Season of the Witch. And I recommend that one because it also comes with that Stars documentary show from the 90s, the Directors.
Yeah.
You learn so much more about Romero on that episode, and great special features also on that side disc.
I love how he does Night of the Living Dead, and then he does this nice little emotional drama. No zombie. And it just tanks, and he's like, "Oh, okay, I might as well just go back to doing art." I just love I read the story. I was like, holy shit, this is a good story. You know,
he had to make it adaptations, but kind of like when you ask someone how big a fan they are, you know, and if they've only seen that actor in that one signature franchise role, you can say, okay, well, not that big a fan. But same thing with Romero. I always ask him, is like, do you only know him from his apocalyptic zombie dramas, or have you actually gone out and seen all his other original projects before he started adapting friend Stephen King's novels?
Yeah.
He's a craftsman, much like Herzog.
Yeah. Herzog, the one thing I'm going to say about Herzog is that if you watch, there's this behind the scenes things you have to watch.
I promise I will get this Blu-ray one day. Sure.
No, it's behind the scenes. It's actually on YouTube.
Oh,
they haven't pulled. It's him. It's Kinski. It's them showing behind the scenes of everything. You know how he doesn't have the cast and the crew. Like, you know, it was kind of a communal thing.
The League of Shadows.
No.
Making Nosferatu.
It was something like it was. Shit, I was trying to remember it.
Okay,
it's like
there's a 79 making of. Okay.
Yeah.
13 minutes. All right.
And it's like, you know, it shows you, you know, it shows everybody, you know, going through their stuff, doing this, doing that, and it's like, you know, the only one who didn't speak German was Isabella Gianni. She had to phonetically learn German for the German version, or she might have been dubbed. You watch it, it's like, you know, they show Beverly Walker, who was the script lady, this dialogue coach, you know, telling Bruno Ganz how to say stuff, you know, how this would work, how that would work, you know, and it's a good watch, you know, it's a fun watch to watch.
I promise I will check this out, gents. Thanks again. Once again, just slaughtered it. You owned it.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be back here next week.
We made it our bitch.
We made it our bitch.
We'll return after these messages.
If you like small town mystery, crazy news, and wild history, then the Florida Men on Florida Man podcast is for you. Each week, Josh Mills and Wayne McCarty bring you the absolute best Florida has to offer. So if you're looking for a show that's safe for the family, but funny enough to help you escape everyday life, then listen to the Florida Men on Florida Man podcast. That's Florida Men, plural, on Florida Man podcast.
The Jacked Up Review Show podcast is honored to be part of the Blind Knowledge Podcast Network. Join anytime, talk the talk, and enjoy yourselves. There's something enlightening for everyone with this crowd of cool cats. Check them out.
Hey, it's Brent Pope, the host of Breakfast with Brent Pope. You've seen me on some of your favorite TV shows saying things like, "Give it up, Jimmy. You got to sink this putt to win." On Breakfast with Brent Pope, I sit down with guests from the entertainment world, and we do it all over breakfast. Or should I say Brentfast? Every week on Brentfast, you get inside Hollywood info and tips, great breakfast recs and booty debates. Most of all, you get the most delightful 30 minutes of your week. So dig in. It's Brentfast time. Listen at Brentfast.com, Apple Podcasts, or wherever fine podcasts are found.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a jacked up